I believe that our world needs an instrument of global action as never before in human history. I believe that the United Nations is the instrument for securing peace and for giving people everywhere, in poorer countries as in richer, a real stake in that peace by promoting development and encouraging cooperation. But the United Nations is only an instrument, an actor in need of props and cues from its director, and so I will paraphrase Winston Churchill. Give us the tools, the trust, the authority, and the means, and we will do the job. By Kofi Annan. Now we will read the Charter of the United Nations and the Statute of the International Court of Justice. The Charter of the United Nations. We, the people of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from the treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of life and larger freedom. And for these ends, to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors, and to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, and to ensure, by the acceptance of principles and the institutions of methods, that armed force shall not be used, save in the common interest, and to employ international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancements of all peoples, have resolved to combine our efforts to accomplish these aims. Accordingly, our respective governments, through representatives assembled in the city of San Francisco, who have exhibited their full powers found to be in good and due form, have agreed to the present Charter of the United Nations, and do hereby establish an international organization to be known as the United Nations. Chapter 1. Purposes and Principles. The purposes of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about, by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustment or settlement of international disputes or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace, to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion, and to be a center for harmonizing actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. Article 2. The organization and its members, in pursuit of the purpose stated in Article 1, shall act in accordance with the following principles. The organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all of its members. All members, in order to ensure all of them the right and benefits resulting from the membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. All members shall give the United Nations every assistance in any action it takes in accordance with the present charter, and shall refrain from giving assistance to any state against which the United Nations is taking preventative or enforcement action. The organization shall ensure that states are not members of the United Nations act in accordance with these principles so far as may be necessary for the maintenance of international peace and security. Nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, or shall require the members to submit such matters to settlement under the present charter. But this principle shall not prejudice the application of enforcement measures under Chapter 8. My friends, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain a little. Number one, it's free. Two, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you've ever been looking for to make a podcast in one place. Go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Chapter 2. Membership. Article 3. The original members of the United Nations shall be states which have participated in the United Nations Conference on the International Organization at San Francisco, or having previously signed the Declaration by the United Nations at January 1st, 1942. Membership in the United Nations is open to all peace-loving states which accept the obligations contained in the present charter and, in the judgment of the organization, are able and willing to carry out these obligations. The admission of any such state to membership in the United Nations will be effected by the decision of the General Council upon the recommendation of the Security Council. Article 5. A member of the United Nations against which preventative or enforcement action has been taken by the Security Council may be suspended from the exercise of the rights and privileges of membership by the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. The exercise of these rights and privileges may be resorted to by the Security Council. Article 6. A member of the United Nations which has persistently violated the principles contained in the present charter may be expelled from the organization by the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. Chapter 3. Organs. There are established as the principal organs of the United Nations a General Assembly, a Security Council, an Economic and Social Council, a Trusteeship Council, an International Court of Justice, and a Secretariat. Such subsidiary organs as may be found necessary may be established in accordance with the present charter. Article 8. The United Nations shall place no restrictions on the eligibility of men and women to participate in any capacity and under conditions of equality in its principal and subsidiary organs. Chapter 4. The General Assembly. Composition. Article 9. The General Assembly shall consist of all the members of the United Nations. Each member shall have not more than 5 representatives in the General Assembly. The functions and powers. Article 10. The General Assembly may discuss many questions or matters within the scope of the present charter or relating to the powers and functions of any organs provided by the present charter, and, except as provided in Article 12, may make recommendations to the members of the United Nations or to the Security Council or to both on any such questions or matters. Article 11. The General Assembly may consider the general principles of cooperation in the maintenance of international peace and security, including the principles governing disarmament, the regulation of armament, and may make recommendations with regard to such principles to the members or to the Security Council or to both. The General Assembly may discuss any questions relating to the maintenance of international peace and security brought before it by any member of the United Nations, or by the Security Council, or by a state which is not a promoting international cooperation, that is not a member of the United Nations in accordance with Article 35, Paragraph 2, and, except as provided in Article 12, may make recommendations with regard to any such questions to the state or states concerned, or to the Security Council, or to both. Any such question on which action is necessary shall be referred to the Security Council by the General Assembly, either before or after discussion. The General Assembly may call the attention of the Security Council to situations which are likely to endanger international peace and security. The powers of the General Assembly set forth in this article shall not limit the general scope of Article 10. Article 12. While the Security Council is exercising in any respect of any dispute or situation the functions assigned to it in the present Charter, the General Assembly shall not make any recommendation with regard to that dispute or situation unless the Security Council so requests. The Secretary General, with the consent of the Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly at each session of any matter relative to the maintenance of international peace and security which are being dealt with by the Security Council, and shall similarly notify the General Assembly or the members of the United Nations if the General Assembly is not in session. Immediately, the Security Council ceases to deal with such matters. Article 13. The General Assembly shall initiate studies and make recommendations for the purpose of a. Promoting international cooperation in the political field and encouraging the progressive development of international law and its codification, promoting international cooperation in the economic, social, cultural, educational, and health fields, and assisting in the realization of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. The further responsibilities, functions, and powers of the General Assembly with respect to matters mentioned in paragraph 1b above are set forth in chapters 9 and 10. Article 14. Subject to the provisions of Article 12, the General Assembly may recommend measures for the peaceful adjustment of any situation, regardless of origin, which it deems likely to impair the general welfare or friendly relations among nations, including situations resulting from violations of the provisions of the present Charter setting forth the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Article 15. The General Assembly shall receive and consider annual and special reports from the Security Council. These reports shall include an account of the measures that the Security Council has decided upon or taken to maintain international peace and security. The General Assembly shall receive and consider reports from the other organs of the United Nations. The General Assembly shall perform such functions with respect to the international trusteeship system as assigned to it under Chapter 12 and 13, including the approval of the trusteeship agreements for areas not designated as strategic. Article 17. The General Assembly shall consider and approve the budget of the organization. The expenses of the organization shall be borne by the members as apportioned by the General Assembly. The General Assembly shall consider and approve any financial and budgetary arrangements with the specialized agencies referred to it in Article 57, and shall examine the administrative budgets of such specialized agencies with a view to making recommendations to the agencies concerned. Every financial decision we make needs to be made with an eye towards the future. I take the time to listen to what your goals and challenges are and work hard to help make those decisions easier. We'll start with a conversation to figure out your needs and find out if we can work together. Together, we'll work to enrich, strengthen, and build a brighter financial future for you and your family. My name is Bogar, and I look forward to working with you. Click on the link below and schedule an appointment at your closest convenience. Thank you. Chapter 5. The Security Council. The composition. The Security Council shall consist of 11 members of the United Nations, the Republic of China, France, the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America shall be permanent members of the Security Council. The General Assembly shall elect 6 other members of the United Nations to be non-permanent members of the Security Council. Due regard being specifically paid in the first instance to the contribution of the members of the United Nations to the maintenance of the international peace and security, and to the other purposes of the organization, and also to the equitable geographical distribution. The non-permanent members of the Security Council shall be elected for a term of 2 years. In the first election of the non-permanent members, however, 3 shall be chosen for a term of 1 year. A retiring member shall not be eligible for immediate re-election. Each member of the Security Council shall have 1 representative. The functions and the powers. Article 24. In order to ensure prompt and effective action by the United Nations, its members confer on the Security Council primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, and agree that in carrying out its duties under this responsibility, the Security Council acts on its behalf. In discharging these duties to the Security Council, shall, in accordance with the purposes and principles of the United Nations, the specific powers granted to the Security Council for the discharge of these duties are laid out in chapters 4, 7, 8, and 9. The Security Council shall submit annual and, when necessary, special reports to the General Assembly for its consideration. Article 25. The members of the United Nations agree to accept and carry out the decisions of the Security Council in accordance with the present Charter. Article 26. In order to promote the establishment and maintenance of international peace and security, with the least diversion of armament of the world's human and economic resources, the Security Council shall be responsible for formulating with the assistance of the Military Staff Committee referred to in Article 47, plans to the subcommittee of the members of the United Nations for the establishment of a system for the regulation of armaments. Voting. Article 27. Each member of the Security Council shall receive 1 vote. Decisions of the Security Council on procedural matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 7 members. Decisions of the Security Council on all other matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 7 members, including the concurring votes of the permanent members, provided that in the decision under Chapter 4 and under Paragraph 3 of Article 52, a party to a dispute shall abstain from voting. Procedure. Article 28. The Security Council shall be so organized as to be able to function continuously. Each member of the Security Council shall for this purpose be represented at all times at the seat of the organization. The Security Council shall hold periodic meetings at which each of its members may, if it so desires, be represented by a member of the government or by some other specifically designated representative. The Security Council may hold meetings at such places other than the seat of the organization, as in its judgment will best facilitate its work. The Security Council may establish such subsidiary organs as it deems necessary for the performance of its functions. Article 30. The Security Council shall adopt its own rules of procedure, including the method of selecting its president. Any member of the United Nations which is not a member of the Security Council may participate without vote in the discussions of any questions brought before the Security Council whenever the latter considers that the interests of the members are specifically affected. Article 32. Any member of the United Nations which is not a member of the Security Council, or any state which is not a member of the United Nations, if it is a party to a dispute under consideration by the Security Council, shall be invited to participate without vote in the discussion relating to the dispute. The Security Council shall lay down such conditions as it deems just for the participation of a state which is not a member of the United Nations.